In case you didn't know, I'm from the Netherlands. A small country in Europe where everybody loves tulips, lives in a windmill, wears wooden shoes, smokes weed and has sex with prostitutes. Besides that, we also have a film industry, or so I've been told. You might have heard of directors like Jan de Bond or Paul Verhoeven, or actors like Rutger Hauer, Famke Janssen and Carice van Houten. We've also made some horror movies, or so I've been told. And you know, since this channel mainly focuses on horror type movies, I thought it would be cool to take a look at some Dutch horror movies. Or, you know, so-called neder-horror. And while we could go back as far as 1909, we're not gonna do that. But we will start with the oldest movie on this list. And for that we have to go back to 1983 to take a look at The Lift. Or, in English, The Lift. I guess lift is a British word, so for all you Americans out there, it would be the elevator. Written and directed by Dick Maas, and this was his first major movie, and it's now actually considered to be one of the classic Dutch horror movies, so well, let's take a look. The Lift. Yeah, there is this elevator in this office complex that seems to have a mind of its own and starts killing people. And if that sounds lame and makes you go like, how can a movie about a killer elevator work? Well, it just kinda does. We follow Huub Stapel, who plays a mechanic or a technician for a company that manufactures and installs elevators, including the titular one. When he can't figure out what's wrong with this particular elevator, he slowly becomes obsessed with finding out and goes out on a secret investigation with the help of this reporter for a magazine. And, you know, that's it, basically. But it's not a bad concept, it's actually pretty cool. Elevators can be scary, you know, or at least to me they are. For some reason I always imagine them breaking down whenever I use one. My mother even told me that after seeing this movie when it originally came out, she was actually scared to take the elevator for a while. So, even though it might sound silly, it's a pretty cool and original concept. And really, I'm using horror in the broadest sense here, because it's more a suspense thriller, I guess. But there are some killings and some are a little gory, and it does get a little creepy or scary every now and then. For early 80s Dutch horror standards, that is, but still. It's really not that bad. It has some nice shots with cool lighting and compositions. And the main guy, he's pretty cool. His acting is okay-ish, but in general the acting, and oh, I really have to take a little break for this one. Because the acting in Dutch movies, I don't know what it is. Either we really don't have a lot of good actors, or it has to do with the weird fact that hearing people like act in Dutch in my native language just sounds so unnatural and forced. Honestly, I almost never watch a movie that's spoken in Dutch because the acting is just awful. And it really makes me wonder if that happens to everybody that watches a movie in their native language. But on the other hand, for example, I know how Americans love their actors, so I don't know what it is. Maybe it's different for non-Dutch speaking people if they watch a Dutch movie because they can't really understand what they're saying. But I don't know, I just wanted to give you guys a heads up in case you do decide to watch some of these movies. Just so you know, be prepared for some pretty bad acting. So, back to The Lift. Although there's really not much more to say about this one. It's nice seeing a Dutch setting for once though. It's so typical. I honestly always recognize it in the blink of an eye. For today's standards, it might be a little slow paced, but I wouldn't call it boring. I mean, it stays pretty entertaining throughout the whole movie. Hey, they don't call this a classic Dutch horror movie for nothing. I know, right? Dick Maas himself also directed a remake called Down, but perhaps better known as The Shaft, starring, what's his name? James from Twin Peaks and Naomi Watts. But I haven't seen this one, but based on the IMDb rating and some of the user reviews on IMDb, it's probably not all that mind-blowing. So, let's just continue to the next movie, also written and directed by Dick Maas. And probably the other classic Dutch horror movie. It's Amsterdamned. And in all honesty, that's a pretty cool title. So let's waste no time and take a trip down to Amsterdam. This movie takes place in, you've guessed it, Amsterdam. The city that most people seem to think is the only city in the Netherlands, or they think it is the Netherlands. But it's just a city. It's the capital though, but it's just a city. Uh-oh, there's a killer on the loose. Something the cops first take notice of when the first body is discovered in this pretty awesome scene early on in the movie.
That's pretty cool. The cops are on the case and we follow this guy, and if he looks familiar, it's because it's Huub Stapel again, who we also saw in The Lift. Yeah, so far it seems like we only got one director and one main actor when it comes to Dutch horror. The movie becomes a slasher whodunit that pretty much follows the exact same setup as we saw in The Lift. You know, with the cop becoming obsessed with the case and having a female character on the side sorta helping him. And where in The Lift he at one point gets suspended from work, here he eventually gets kicked off the case. And also, like in The Lift, his character is this pretty cool guy. But perhaps the most important character in this movie is Amsterdam itself. It really plays a big role, since the killer is active from within the grachten. A word that's apparently almost untranslatable, but it's basically just a canal. And if you've ever visited Amsterdam, you know that there are a shitload of canals there. It's basically what makes Amsterdam Amsterdam. Besides the red light district, of course. But yeah, they play a huge part, especially later in the movie where there is this long, awesome chase scene through the canals. It's really cool. Actually, the whole movie is pretty cool. You get some gruesome murders, but there's also some comedic elements to it, and definitely enough little action sequences to keep you entertained throughout. The acting is, well, like I stated before, not all that great, especially not by these kids.
Nee man, hij is hartstikke gevaarlijk. Hij heeft een mes.
Ja, Horus, het was jouw idee. Jij wou je vader toch helpen?
The girl, however, I would later develop a bit of a crush on when in the late 90s she hosted this gorilla-type repertoire show with another girl. Or was it Jennifer I had a crush on? Probably both. But yeah, Amsterdamned. It's pretty cool. The soundtrack, done by Dick Maas himself, who often composed the music for his own movies, is pretty cool too. Sounds kinda dated, very 80-ish, but still quite memorable. All in all, it's probably one of the better horror movies that we have to offer.
Although in all honesty it's much more a action/thriller type of movie, but because of the fact that it follows this slasher formula, I guess it's still okay to list it as a horror movie. Also, otherwise it would have become pretty hard to find 5 movies to cover in this video. Anyway, let's continue to the next movie, the first one not to be directed by Dick Maas. Also from the late 80s we take a 20-year jump to 2006 for the movie Slate Nate? It's actually Slachtnacht. You know, an 8 in Dutch is an 8 or 8 if I'm pretending that I'm not from the southern part. So Slachtnacht, Slaughter Night. So sounds exciting, right? Well, let's find out.
So, from a late 80s whodunit slasher to a not even 10-year-old quite generic slasher. But hey, I had to find 5 movies, right? Although in all honesty, this one is quite entertaining for what it is. So, these kids go on a road trip to get the main girl's dead father's manuscript. At this location there's also an old mine and the group decides to take a tour, but the elevator breaks down and The movie starts out brutal enough. We first get a backstory where we see a guy kidnapping and beheading little children. And then in present time we actually see the accident in which the main girl's father dies. It's pretty gruesome stuff. But yeah, so there is this backstory that I won't get into, but it's actually quite interesting. Better than the prank gone wrong and now it's time for revenge motive that we've seen in a lot of slashers. And then they take out the Ouija board. That's never a good idea. And you always have that one asshole who's moving the thing himself, you know? In this group it's this blonde guy and he's really quite freaking annoying in this movie. He really annoyed me a lot. Like, why would they even be friends with this guy? But yeah, a slasher, so we get some kills. First it seems like most of them are off screen, but later in the movie we do get some cool and gory death scenes. The thing that annoys me the most about this movie, however, is the shaking camera during these action scenes. Like, seriously, camera operator, I'm trying to watch a fucking slasher flick, a type of movie that entertainment-wise heavily depends on the action and killing scenes. And this is where you decide to start shaking the camera like a cocktail? I actually saw someone using the term camera cocktail. I like that. I'm gonna use it more often. But it seriously is hella annoying. So in the end, it's really just an okay ghost/possession slasher flick set in the mines. Think My Bloody Valentine, but with a supernatural aspect. And crappy Dutch actors. And made a quarter of a century later. And being much more forgettable.
Well, that's Slagnacht for you. It's okay. I actually mostly covered it so I could make the Slate Nate joke in the beginning. No, but seriously, if you don't set your standards too high and, you know, you can enjoy a dumb slasher flick, it's really not that bad. It's nothing special, but hey, it's a Dutch horror movie. And we really don't have too many left, so I'm afraid we have to go back to Dick Maas once again. Yeah, out of the 5 movies that I'm covering in this video, 3 are from the same director. But this one is a much more recent movie, and it was even a little controversial upon its release. Sint. And I guess that would translate to Saint. Well, let's dive right in.
Although first, a little backstory. Here in the Netherlands, besides Christmas with Santa Claus, we all know him, we also celebrate Sinterklaas, or, you know, Sint for short, usually on the 5th and or 6th of December. He's this wise old man that comes from Spain on his steamboat and has all of his black Pete's delivering candy and presents to all the kids. Hashtag no racism. In recent years, the whole celebration has become very controversial because of the portrayal of the Black Pete's, which, if you've never seen any of this, I can imagine must look pretty weird. But I really don't want to get into any of that for now. All you need to know is that it's supposed to be a happy time, you know, because you'll get candy and presents. So, obviously, this movie is about a killer Sint. There's tons of killer Santa movies, so why not? Did you know that the image of Santa Claus is even based on that of Sinterklaas? I mean, the name already makes it pretty obvious. So, a slasher flick. We have a backstory, a special holiday, teenagers that look way too old, fake scares, gory killings and a virgin.
Met wie doe jij het eigenlijk tegenwoordig?
Lisa, die gelooft niet in seks voor het huwelijk.
Oh.
And it's just a fun slasher flick. It doesn't seem to take itself too seriously.
Ik dacht dat wij dit jaar niet aan Sinterklaas zouden doen.
And neither should the viewer. Just have fun with it. It has some pretty cool action scenes. And the movie itself looks pretty good. The cinematography is really nice actually. And the movie even manages to create a nice little atmosphere. The one thing that did really take me out of the movie a little bit though were the dodgy CGI effects. I mean, that looks pretty bad. Besides that, some of the plot doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense, but that doesn't really matter that much. It took me a while before I finally sat down to see this movie, because from what I've heard when it just came out from people that did see it, they all said it was pretty stupid. So maybe my standards are just low, but hey, I thought it was pretty fun.
The controversy I mentioned before I started reviewing this video actually didn't have anything to do with the celebration of Sinterklaas, but more so with the fact that the posters were supposedly too disturbing for the kids because it portrays Sinterklaas as this evil monster. But really, if anything, this controversy only helped to promote this movie, and some would even go as far as to argue that this whole controversy was, you know, like done on purpose for that specific reason. In the end, doesn't really matter, it's just a fun slasher flick, definitely not something to overthink. And that, well, that brings us to the last movie, and whew, it's a good one. I might be cheating a little bit because it's actually a Dutch-French co-production and a lot of the dialogue is in French. But hey, at least the director, he's Dutch, although he was born in France. But it's definitely based on a Dutch novel. Of course, I'm talking about Spoorloos. Known internationally as, I guess, The Vanishing, and no, not the 1993 American version. This is 88 and let's just take a look.
This movie is definitely a case of the less you know the better, so I'm gonna start off this review by just recommending you to watch it, and I'll try to keep it short and explain why I recommend it. Really shortly put, it's a good movie. But let's see. This couple, a Dutch girl and Belgian guy, are on their way for a vacation in France. But when they make a stop at this gas station / rest stop, where after the girl goes in to buy some drinks, she never comes back. That's it. More or less. The guy becomes obsessed with, well, not per se finding her back, but at least finding out what happened to her, even 3 years after the incident, when eventually this other guy that might be responsible for her disappearance reaches out to him. And even though it's not really a horror movie, this concept, this idea is much more frightening, horror-ish than a lot of other ideas, Killer Sint for example. It's way more relatable. This movie really puts you in a what the hell would you do or how the hell would you feel in a situation like that type of feeling. And the second time I saw this, I appreciate it even more as just a character study. So if you've heard enough by now and you're sold, just skip to here, because I'm about to go a little more in depth now. Because first of all, the main guy, he's very interesting. His actions might not always seem rational, but hey, what the hell would you do in a situation like that? Even 3 years later, now having a new girlfriend, he's still very much obsessed with his disappeared wife. And besides him and the dynamics of their relationship, we also have the other guy. And it's not even that much of a spoiler, because it becomes pretty obvious early on in the movie that he's the bad guy. He is such an interesting character and very, very well played. Notice that he's French and not Dutch. He's really evil, but he can very well explain and almost even justify his behavior. Oh wow, it's yeah, well, both characters are really interesting and very well written. It's quite fascinating. And that's it. You really just have to see for yourself how the whole story unfolds. It's really good. It's slow paced, but it never actually bothered me. If anything, I'm only afraid that it'll stop others from checking it out, and that would be a shame.
Because it's really good and definitely worth the slow pacing. My girlfriend, she isn't Dutch, and when I told her that I was gonna watch Spoorloos, she thought that I said that I was gonna watch Porno. It's a nice little anecdote for you guys. But yeah, it's really good. It's been remade 5 years later by the same director for an American audience. And while I haven't seen it, I've read into it a little bit, and from what I understand, I'm not missing out too much. And that, boys and girls, brings us to the end of this little overview of Dutch horror movies. I'm actually considering maybe making another part, because even though I'm joking, there must be more. I mean, I guess I could find 5 more movies to cover in a new part. But I don't know, maybe. Or maybe, you know, like horror movies from another specific country. Is that an idea? Let me know, and then I'll see you guys next time. Have a nice day. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video or the stuff on my channel in general, please consider supporting all of that by going over to patreon.com/horriblereviews. There's a short video on that page, just check it out, that will explain everything. By doing so, it'll make it easier for me to make more videos and, you know, crank up the quality a little bit. You see the list of people over there? They are already supporting, and, you know, that's awesome. Thank you guys. If not, doesn't matter, nothing will change. I mean, I'll still try to make as many videos as possible. So thank you, and see you next time.